All right, guys, what's up? It's Jack, and welcome back to another video. So, whether you are a person that is a casual, or whether you're a sweat, or whether you're into the competitive scene or whatnot, I think it's safe to admit that probably the majority of us know that this is Optic Scump's last year of competing. Now, I wanted to make a video on this simply because of the fact that I don't think there's ever been another player that has been overall as influential as Scump when you look at the beginning of his career all the way to, what is said to be his last year competing in this game. Um uh, it's really impressive what he's been able to achieve over the years, and on top of that, he has been consistently in the conversation of who's the best player, who's the best player, who's the best player. He's almost always been a top 3 player in every single Call of Duty. And obviously he's been very consistent over his career and all that kind of stuff. Very talented. He gets a ton of views on his videos, on whatever videos he decides to make, or even whatever game he decides to play. And it's also been shown that the man is also talented beyond Call of Duty in terms of video games in general. It almost makes you think that he can go pro in any game if he wanted to, granted it was a shooter or something like that. So that makes for an interesting part of the conversation also, which we're going to get into a little bit later. But as of right now, man, it is his last year, and overall the amount of impact he's had on the sport has been huge. And there's even some people, whether they're pro players or non-pro players alike, that are basically saying, yeah, the pro scene is going to take a hit when Scump decides to retire, in terms of its popularity and all that kind of stuff. Because when you think of Optic Gaming, I mean, obviously, yes, Nadeshot was a big influence, but for the most part, like, Nadeshot, like, as big as influence as he was, there was something that he just didn't have that Scump had. Scump was also that amazing player as well. And even back when Nadeshot was still in his prime and still with Optic and still the influential figure that he was, Scump was really like starting to rise at a faster pace than Nadeshot was. So, like, it was only a matter of time before Scump would get to the point where he would surpass Nadeshot as like the face of Optic Gaming and that kind of guy, so to speak, right? And it did happen. Obviously, Nadeshot ended up going to do his own thing and stuff like that, but just naturally, Scump became that guy. He was always the face of Optic Gaming. He was pretty much the face of Call of Duty. He's the most popular Call of Duty esports player probably at this point. Still, and the only reason I say probably is because of where he's at right now. I know that there's a lot of young guns that are coming up or whatnot. But it's going to be really difficult to kind of fill Scump's shoes. One of the reasons is because Scump was coming up as the Call of Duty scene was coming up, right? So he was rising with everything. Like, the popularity of YouTube was starting to rise and everything like that. It was the golden age of COD competitive and all that kind of stuff, and that is when Scump really started to rise. And you know what the funny thing is? It all started with a shout out from Ronaldinho, who is one of my favorite pub players ever. I mean, right now I don't think he does anything right now, but it all started with a shout out from Ronaldinho, and then after that it just kind of went from there, and there's even some other players in the community like the MWII that have also shouted out Scump and stuff like that. Ronaldinho shouted him out, and after that, he was just mentioned, which is how I found out about him. MWII ended up mentioning him in a combat record video of his back in Black Ops 2, and he said that Optic Scump is probably the best player in Call of Duty right now. And next thing you know, I looked up Optic Scump and I was watching his stuff, and I was like, and then after that, that's how I became aware of the pro scene and everything that came with it. So looking back at it, I'm really actually curious as to what you guys watching this video might think. What kind of hit is the Call of Duty competitive scene going to take? Now, obviously, Optic Gaming is still likely going to be the most popular team in Call of Duty, at least for now. And you definitely have a lot of talent on that team as well. You've got Shotzi now, you've got Dashy, and then a few other people or whatnot. And then obviously the content creation standpoint always, Optics content creation and everything like that is really top notch from every way you look at it. Their video production is incredible. They've got podcasts going on, every single one of their members. is consistently uploading content and stuff like that, and rightfully so. There's streams. You've got the Optic Halo team, which is an incredible team that just won champs. So there's lots of talent and lots of consistency and lots of high quality content from their point of view. And I would probably say that if it wasn't for like the example that the Optic organization set, I don't think a lot of these other teams would be at where they are today in terms of their production value and stuff like that, because Optic were like the first to pretty much do everything, you know, even with like the Optic House and all that kind of stuff. And I remember the days, man. It was Merc, Nadeshot, Scump, and somebody else. I know that Big Timer retired after Black Ops 2, if I'm not mistaken. So, who was, by the way, the original GOAT, you know, for being the most winningest COD player from back then. So looking at it now, it's like, yeah, this is going to be Scump's last year. You know, it would kind of really be cool if they actually won this year. Like if they won COD champs this year, it would be a really good way for Scump to finish his career with a second ring, because right now he's got one, and he's got I think the second highest most tournament wins, if I'm not mistaken. So only behind Crim6. So for him to have a second ring would be a really big thing for him. And in terms of his skill level and all that kind of stuff, he deserves to be among the list of people that have gotten 2 rings. You know, I know Apathy's got 2 rings. I know JCap's got 2 rings. I know Aches has 2 rings. And from a skill standpoint, Scump definitely deserves to be on that list of the guys that have gotten 2 rings. But he's also gotten an X Games gold medal or whatnot. So, but the thing is, it's really an interesting story, because here's the thing. We know that he's very talented, and if he actually wanted to still compete, he could still compete, right? So it's ultimately his decision to stop playing Call of Duty as far as competitive goes. But in the video game world and everything like that, you just never know. Like when Formal, for instance, stopped playing COD when he retired from COD, he went on to play Halo when he realized he was really good at Halo, right? And the next thing you know, that very first year, they actually won champs. I mean, granted, it wasn't just because of Formal alone. I mean, Lucid and APG and Trippy are incredible players in and of themselves, right? I mean, all those guys are great. I mean, but with that being said, you know, he fit in very, very well. He even played against them when he temporarily went on Sentinels, and then after that, they got rid of Pistola to get Formal. So, and we'll see what happens with Pistola, because Pistola is a legend in and of himself. But the thing is this: in a video game world where it's happened before in the past with other players, well, Scump, if he actually wanted to, could play something else. Like if he wanted to, there could be another game that comes out in the future where he could be like, hey, you know what, I'm actually pretty good at this game, and he might come back and play competitively in that game. In my eyes, I would love that game to be X Defiant, because there's just enough similarities with COD, but then other things going on as well. So because that game's not going to have skill-based matchmaking, you know that you're going to see videos of Scump just stomping, right? Lobbies, which is going to bring you back to the old days and stuff like that. And Scump might find that extremely fun. He'll be like, you know what, let me see what competitive or what ranked is like in this game and stuff like that. And you never know. The world's most popular Call of Duty player may end up playing competitively in a different game in the future. I wouldn't count it out, and I don't think anybody should count it out, quite frankly. I think it's I mean, obviously the young man has done very well with his money. He's you know, he still very much has the mentality of someone who quote unquote hasn't made it, despite the fact that he has made it, and despite the fact that he's making the amount of money per year that he's making, which is very successful. So you put everything together, it's like he certainly is playing his cards correctly and very wisely, which is great. It's good to see that. But with that being said, I think he could very well be successful in another game as well. When SM Squared comes out, you know he's gonna play that. You know, the thing is with Scump, like whatever video he posts, it's gonna make a lot of views. And that's another thing that separates him from most other people. Like, people want to see this guy do his thing. They want to see him make content. They want to see him play certain games or whatnot, and especially if those are shooters. But regardless of whether or not they're shooters, the unique thing about this guy is that like he is very likely still going to get almost, if not the same amount of views, regardless of what kind of video he makes. And obviously, you know, with classic Scump, it's you know, obviously they love to watch him pub stomp, obviously, because that's bread and butter Scump and stuff like that. And I agree, and it is fun to watch. And I've watched a lot of those over the years. Not so much as competitive, because it's, you know, because I can't relate as much. I just don't find it as entertaining for me personally. Although I do watch it here and there, but when it comes down to it, he's, you know, he's a person that a lot of people out there want to watch and see whatever he does. So I would say yes. He said that it's going to be his last year competing. So okay. So with that being said, that doesn't mean that the doors are closed to anything else. All it really takes is for a player to really enjoy playing a certain game, and if they see that they're actually good at that game, the question will come up in their mind like, hey, should I compete? Would I be good competing in this game, and all that and all that other stuff? So that's the kind of question that actually enters somebody's mind when that happens. That's what happened with Formal, for instance, right? So, and again, there's people that have gone from Halo to COD, or COD to Halo, or whatnot. So more Halo to COD more than anything else, but you guys get the point. I think that although this is going to be Scump's last year, according to, you know, what he said or whatnot, as of right now, I think that the doors are not quite closed yet in terms of what could happen within the next year or two. So at least possibly. And then there's obviously the other side of things. There's PC as well. I believe it's been said that like Scump can do very well on mouse and keyboard instead. So I mean, who knows? I mean, some of these COD pros absolutely love to play Valorant. So it's like, is Scump one of these people, or does Scump like CS:GO, or does Scump like something else? It's like, you don't know. And yeah, and it's like, or can you imagine Scump playing Halo? I mean, you know, you can't really underestimate someone's talent like that, and to see what they do. And on top of that, there's a popularity. Whatever franchise Scump is, like if he decides to go to another franchise after retiring from COD and to play competitively in that game, guess what? He is going to elevate that franchise. No doubt about it. There's going to be a lot of eyes that used to watch COD competitive, specifically Optic, right, that are going to shift just because Scump went to that other other franchise to compete. That's how popular Scump is. That is the kind of horsepower that he brings to the table, so to speak, that not many other players, if any, have, really. So so I'm interested to see how things unfold. So you know, good luck to him this year. I hope he goes out. I hope he goes out on the highest note possible. And yeah, I'm actually really eager to see as to what he plays later on, especially with some of these other games like SM Squared, X Defiant, or whatever else he decides to do, because it's going to be really interesting to see things unfold and see if the popularity of that other franchise, where that happens and where that goes and how many views you get, you know, because whenever Optic comes to play, guess what? The views for competitive rise, they go way up, and then they drop after Optic doesn't play. So, and I think the biggest reason for that is because of Scump. You know, there's obviously the popularity of the brand, the Optic brand, of course, but there's also Scump. So we'll see. But anyway, guys, that's all I got for this one. Let me know down in the comment section, what kind of impact do you think it's going to have when Scump retires on the competitive side? And do you think Scump might just call it quits for good and just do content and streaming? Or do you guys think that he might possibly play another game? And if so, what game is it? And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.